Hello everyone, my name is Ivan Strumov, and today we will start a series of talking about MATLAB, and today it will be MATLAB for beginners, and mostly we will be focused in variables in MATLAB. Thus we will start from the beginner. Okay, first of all, let's try to understand what is MATLAB. First of all, MATLAB is a numerical computing engine which has a high level of programming language created by MathWorks. MATLAB namely means matrix laboratory. This is quite important. It means that any variable in MATLAB, it is matrix, and it is very great because it saves a lot of time for all of us. Next, what we need to know that MATLAB is written in C or C++ and Java language. Also, it is a multi-platform system which can be run in any operation system, I think. First time MATLAB was presented in 1984. It means approximately 40 years already we have possibility to use with such kind of laboratory. Okay, but before we will start, let's try to find the way how we can download MATLAB or operate with him. Let me show you three most popular ways how you can interrogate with MATLAB environment. First of all, we can go to MathSoft website and just download MATLAB. And here we are. Thus, from MathWorks official website, we can download the latest version of MATLAB for personal computer or for servers, and of course we can try for 1 month for free. Thus, just click download free trial, then download it and use it for 1 month. Also, if you are part of some university or academic, in this case you can ask your IT support desk to get your login and password to be possible to prolongate your license period for more time that you can in your academic. Next way how we can interrogate with MATLAB, it is MATLAB Online. In this case, we just can use Google, then MATLAB Online, hop, and then go to the MathWorks website. Then we are in MATLAB Online, then start using MATLAB Online, and here we are. It is interface from which you can start your MATLAB online. However, in this case you also should to choose the way how you can use it, because it is prepaid service, and in this case you also can use 1 month for free, but next you need to pay some fees for computing. MATLAB Online use web interface, thus you do not need to install anything in your personal computer or laptop. In this case you interrogate with computation equipment which is located somewhere in servers of MathWorks, and you just use web interface to code and send this code to computation cluster somewhere, and results of computation come back to your web interface, and you able to see graphs, analysis, whatever you would like. But All of that, it will be in web interface, and you do not need to install anything. Or in some cases you do not have permission to install something on your PC. In this case, MATLAB Online, this is great solution for that. And third way how we can interrogate with MATLAB environment, it is application in Android or iOS devices. In this case, for example, if you talk about Android device, we can go to MATLAB Play Market, and here we've got a link by which we can download MATLAB Mobile, and I think in this case we do not have to choose between trial or full-scale support application. I think MATLAB Mobile is free for everyone, and in this case we have some kind of interface by which we can also code something, then run these codes and getting results. Also quite important that MATLAB Mobile does not use your device for computation. In this case, MATLAB Mobile just send your code to computation cluster of MathWork, and then computation cluster of MathWork generates results, and these results come back to your device and will be visualized as a graphs or something like that. It depends on your code. But I think MATLAB Mobile, it is a good application and good solution for those who do not have permission for long-term MATLAB using in your personal computers. Also quite important that MATLAB Mobile provides access to sensors in your gadget. What does it mean? It means that in any mobile phone, for example, we have 3 accelerometers, 3 gyroses, 3 magnetometers, and it helps us to getting this data directly from device. It means that in your codes in MATLAB you can just use variables which operates with acceleration, as you can see here, x, y, z, or components of magnetic field strength vector or intensity vector, or with azimuth pitch roll of your device. It's really amazing because you can use variety of codes, for example codes for inertial navigation, and you can develop your own inertial navigation system just in your mobile phone, and you can run and use it in real time in your mobile phone. Okay, thus there are 3 main applications of MATLAB and 3 different ways how we can use. Each of us should to choose one of this way and use it. Okay, as you can see, I will use MATLAB for personal computers, and also I can suggest you also to use the same version of MATLAB, because in this case you will get access to the whole functionality of MATLAB and reached the best goals based on your personal computer performance. First of all, let me introduce interface of MATLAB. When we run MATLAB, you will get interface like that, and you can see that Here we've got the same ribbons and menus as we usually have in Microsoft Office suite. We have home, plot, application and possible shortcuts. Next we have line for path, current path of MATLAB, and three main areas. First of all, it is current folder in the left side, then command window in the center. In command window we will run some codes and also we obtain some results. Next, workspace at the right side. Workspace, it is like environment of variables where we can easily get values of any variable which we would like to use. What we have in our home ribbon. Here we have creation and use script. That is quite important because usually we will create predefined scripts which we run, and script it is a set of codes which will be sent to computation facility of MATLAB, and then we will obtain results according to our script. Thus, in 99% of codes in MATLAB we use scripts for programming. Then here we can run, here we've got button for creation a new script, creation a new live script. We will talk about it later, functions, some examples, classes, and so on. Also, we can open previously created scripts in MATLAB to run it, or just use open window in Windows to reach file which we would like. Next, we have good functionality for compare two different scripts. It's very useful, for example, when you are working in team and someone adds a few lines, and then you would like to compare two scripts to understand the difference between them. Thus, compare function script. It will be very useful because it will highlight lines which is different. Then we've got variable zone in our home ribbon. Here we've got import data. By this button we can easily import data for variety of sources. Excel, CSV, any other formats for database. Even you can copy some table and then use import data to import from clipboard, and in this case your data will be migrated into variables in MATLAB. Then save workspace. It's also quite important function because usually when we run some scripts we've got many variables, and if you would like to use these variables later in other scripts, it's quite useful, for example, for data processing. When we process some trajectory data of aircraft, for example, and then we can use save workspace to save coordinates of aircraft and later run it for some surveillance function, for example, or for modeling of aircraft movement. Thus, saving workspace, it's very good functionality which helps to use variables from previously run codes. Next, new variable. I think it is quite easy to understand. Open variable and clear workspace. This function also quite useful. Next, we've got area for code. Here we've got functions for analyzing code, in this case, MATLAB will check your code for probably mistake and indicates possible ways for improvement of your code. Then run and optimization this code. Then clear commands, also quite useful. Then we have huge built-in functionality of Simulink in MATLAB. Unfortunately, in my course I don't want to touch Simulink, thus in most time we will be focused only in developing scripts in pure MATLAB without Simulink. But Simulink, it is other big book of MATLAB. Next, environment area. Here we have some pretty good functions. First of all, it is layout. In this case, we can select layout for our sub windows, or maybe some areas of MATLAB. Thus, we can choose, for example, two column. In this case, command window will have the most space, and then current folder and workspace. Then command window only, for example, and so on. Thus you can organize your table in MATLAB as you wish. I will use default, which represents three main windows, which will be useful for us. Then next we've got preference, also quite important thing. Just a second, it has been opened here. Here we have many different places when we can tune MATLAB for your particular requirements. Also quite important, for example, for me, here it is a fonts. You can go to fonts and change size of font. For example, you can increase size or you can decrease size. Thus it is quite useful button here. All other buttons probably we will touch during the operation in MATLAB. Thus let's go next. Thus I will apply changing of size of fonts for MATLAB. Okay, next, set up paths in MATLAB. In this case, also quite important that MATLAB by default use folder of installation files of MATLAB for main paths for any scripts. In MATLAB there are many different functions, and all of these functions, it is some scripts in MATLAB, which is physically some file with name of this function. Thus, by default, MATLAB use folder where we install our MATLAB for further operation. And in this case, if you, for example, run codes out of our default path, we will need to change it for new one. In most cases, new one will be added to the list of predefined paths in MATLAB. Probably you will not need to delete like default path, or you will not need to change paths here, because all of them is connected with some functions in MATLAB. And if you remove some paths, for example here, you've got some problems in running some scripts. Okay, let's go next. Parallel computing. Parallel computing, it's also another functionality of MATLAB. In this case, MATLAB can use specific function to run your scripts in different cores in your personal computer. For example, we've got one task. In this task we can divide into their some subtasks, and these subtasks we can run in separate cores of your personal computer in parallel, and in this case MATLAB will increase speed of computation. However, everyone who would like to play with a parallel computer should be very careful, because by default MATLAB try to use your computational performance of your unit is much better and effective. Thus, in most cases, you do not need to use parallel computing, or only in some particular task. But in most cases, which we will discuss with you, you do not need to interrogate with parallel computing. Then, add-ons. In this case, MATLAB has got quite big functionality for data exchange with different equipment. In this case, you will need to set up some packages for operation with some kind of equipment. Also, here you can add some libraries and tune packages of toolboxes in MATLAB. Thus, usually if you use like default version of MATLAB, you will not need it. But if you would like to code software-defined radio, for example, you will need to install a particular package to support this equipment, and to get MATLAB be possible to interrogate with this equipment. Next, it is a help. In MATLAB we have plenty of functions, and all of these functions is quite different, and even me don't know most of them. Thus, help, it is powerful tool for finding any answers that you can have. For example, if you would like to plot something, you just can type plot and click enter, and you will get results how you can use plot function for two-dimensional graph or for any other types of data. Thus, built-in help for MATLAB is very useful, because it means that it uses the version of MATLAB that you have in your personal computer. Okay, probably that's all related to the home. Then let's switch to the plot. In plot we have quite many different options for graphs. For example, why we have this ribbon here, and why we have special graphs as in Excel, for example, or in Microsoft Office. Why? Because it is quite useful, for example, for grab data from some other sources by import variable like import data. Thus, by import data we can download the data in our workspace, and then we just can select few variables and then go to plot and select the way how we can visualize this data. In this case, even you do not need to code in MATLAB. You can just select the data and then click prepare some report or graph of this data. It is very useful, for example, in accounting or some economical reason. It's very useful for analyzing the data which you can grab outside of MATLAB in this case. Application. In application, usually you've got some functions that come from different toolboxes. Thus, you will get access to particular functionality. And probably that's all related to toolboxes. And now we are ready to start coding in MATLAB. First of all, take attention that at the beginning we will use just command window to test some commands and function. Later we will switch to script, and all other advanced codes we will create in editor for scripts. First of all, we need to try to create some variables and matrices, and we will discuss about simple math operations under the variables and matrices. First of all, let me introduce basic types of variables that we have in MATLAB. Well, let's try to create first variable in MATLAB. Let it be variable A. In this case, I just need to click in command window. Here we can see flashing cursor, and we can enter title of variable, then put equal and enter some value for this variable. For example, it will be 12. Then I need to run this small code for execution. I just click enter, and I've got results that variable A has been created, and it holds value 12. Also in workspace you can see that variable A has been created, and type of this variable is double. Double it used for float and integer values in MATLAB, and the value of this variable is 12. If you try to create some another variable with for example 12.5, you also can see the same results, that B it will be double. Next, if you would like to enter or operate with some strings, that is quite useful in MATLAB, because sometimes we need to read some data from files which includes string data. In this case, we need to use string or char variables. For example, it be variable C, and string values will be entered in apostrophes. Thus we just can add some letter D and then run for execution, and you can see that variable C is equal D, where D is just letter. And if we check in workspace, we can see that C it is char type of variable, and it includes D, string D. Also we can create a little bit longer string. Thus, for example, CD is equal to hello MATLAB, and then if you run, you can see that the whole string, like sequence of letters, will be inside of D. Thus D is also char, which holds value hello MATLAB as a string. Next quite important type of variable in MATLAB, it is logical. In this case, if you remember from logic operations course, logical variables can take only two conditions, 0 or 1, because it's logical operators. And in MATLAB we use, for example, f variable will be logical, and to set up logical variable we just need to set, for example, false or true. In this case f is false, which means 0 in logical operator. And if we use like f1 true, it means f1 is 1, because in logical operation true is 1. Also, if you check in our workspace, f will be logical variable which is equal to 0 or false, and f1 is logical variable which is equal to 1, which means true. And final type of variable which we use, which we may use in our short coding, it will be holding of functions. In this case, let's create variable f2, and we will use add symbol to specify handled function, for example help, and enter. And if we come back to workspace, you will see that f2 is a function handle variable, and it includes ghelp, for example. Thus add at the beginning of line means handle function. That's the basic types of variables in MATLAB. Let's try to apply some arithmetic operations for them. First of all, let's try to test plus or minus. Thus, I will use f3 will be equal a plus b, for example. And here you are, we've got matrix f3, which is equal to particular value, which means sum of two of these variables. If I use f4, b minus a, I've got some results. The same for multiplication. f5 is equal b multiply with f4. We've got some value. Division in MATLAB will be organized in the same way. Also, in order to speed up interrogation with MATLAB in command window, you can use keyboard up and down to scroll between previous and next commands in command window. Thus, I can just click up, and I've got dialog box, as you can see. Then I can click enter, and I've got previous command. Or I can just navigate within this command and change something, for example, for division, and I've got absolutely another results for division. And I can also use power to sign of power to get order of some value. Other quite important thing, it is logical operators. And for example, let's create variable f6, and let's compare variable a and variable b. Thus, I can just use logical input as following, and I've got logical decision. What does it mean? It means that I asked if a less than b. A is equal 12, b is equal 12 and 0.5. And yes, it is true. Thus, we've got 1. If I ask some other question, for example, if A more than B, I've got false. Thus, this is pure logical operator and logical syntaxes, which will be helpful when you need to find some outliers in data, or you need to find some data which follows some specific condition. If we would like to check equally, or we just can use the following syntaxes. We need to use double equal, and in this case we will ask if A equal B. Thus I should use double equal sign in these syntaxes, and of course I is not equal to B. Thus I've got false. Also, in some cases we can apply combination of different conditions. In this case we use joint functions AND or. But about this input we will talk a little bit later when we consider some loop or switchers in MATLAB syntaxes. Next, let's create probably some matrices in MATLAB, because if you remember, each variable in MATLAB, it is matrix, and even if you put one value, MATLAB will create matrix which will have one row and one column. This is definitely basic in MATLAB, that each variable is a matrix. Therefore, let's create a small matrix and let it be matrix M. Also take attention that capital case and lowercase in MATLAB, it is absolutely different variables. They will be recognized as different values. Thus, let's create matrix M, capital case, and to create matrix M we need to use squared brackets like that, and then we can enter values of one row, okay, something like that. And if you click enter, we've got matrix M with 5 elements, which includes one row and 5 columns. Also, if you check in workspace, you will see that we've got matrix M and it holds values from 1 to 5. If you can click in matrix like sign here, variable window will be opened, and here we can see, like in Excel, big table with our values inside of this matrix M. But I will close it. Okay, other way how we can input some matrix, we can use comma to separate columns. Thus we can use following representation, okay, 4, 5, and we've got the same results. Thus space or comma I use to separate columns in matrix. But if you would like to add additional row, in this case we need to use semicolon. Thus, for example, let's create matrix M2, then squared brackets, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then semicolon. It means that we will go to another line or another row of our matrix, and then 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and run. In this case you see that we've got mistake because number of columns in 2 rows are different. Thus we need to reduce number of column in the second row. Thus it is red text, it means error in entering of some matrix value. And you also can see that in workspace we do not have M2 matrix. Thus what I need to do, just click up, we've got previous line, then reduce amount of data into the second row, and then click enter, and we've got our matrix. In this case we create matrix M2 with 2 rows and 5 columns. Other quite important thing, if you would like to change rows with columns, or if you would like to rotate matrix in 90 degrees, we can use transformation function. Thus I will create matrix M3, which will be equal to matrix M2. However, I will add apostrophe at the end, and it means transponation of matrix. And we've got transponated matrix, which will be rotated matrix for 90 degrees. You can see that in this case columns and rows has been changed. And also it's very useful when we apply some matrix operators and we've got some problems with size. Okay, next, if we would like to get some data from matrix, we can use addressing in matrices. In this case, let me open M3. Thus I just click at M3 button. Here you will see that we've got matrix M3 and it includes some values, and let's get this value from code. In this case we need to specify that could we get value which is located at third row and at first column. To do that we just can type M3, then specify address third row first column, and then if you click enter we've got third value. Also we can use the same syntaxes for changing this variable. Thus we can put like 77 and click enter, and you will see that we've got at this address we've got value that we put. The same here we've got in variable space. 77 has been changed. Of course, in any case you can just click here and then change it. However, during the coding some particular thing, we need to do it from code, not from manual side. Okay, next, also quite important, if we would like to get first value of matrix, like let's use matrix of matrix with one row M1. Thus if we would like to get first element of matrix row, we just can specify only one address M1, and we've got that M1 is equal to 1. Also, if you would like to get last element, we can put word AND at the address side, and we will get final element of matrix M1. Also we can specify like for two-dimensional matrix M2 M3 like AND comma AND, which means getting value which is located at the last column and the last row. If we would like to get some row or column, it is also possible in MATLAB. For example, if you would like to get only first column of matrix M3, thus we need to specify all rows first column, and here we are. The same for second column. If you would like to get a particular row, for example, third row I would like to extract, I can specify something like that. Also, I can change values in matrix at the same way. Thus, let's change second row of matrix. In this case, we specify second row, all columns is equal to new matrix. For example, 44, 55. And then if you run, you will see that this row has been changed. Thus, we most time use during the coding addressing, because always we will get some data from matrix and then we need to save data at particular value. And most codes includes operation with some data. Thus, we will extract data, then change, apply some functions, or doing something terrible in math, and then come back this data at particular place. Thus, addressing in matrices is very important. Okay, next let's talk a little bit about a few functions which is very useful for generating matrices. As an example, if you would like to create matrix with zeros, here we have function zeros. Thus, let's create matrix M4, which will be equal to 0 matrix. Thus, we need to ask zeros function as sinus, as sine or cosine function in MATLAB use the same syntax as title and argument, and we need to specify in argument how many rows and columns it will include. As an example, in my case, let's create matrix zeros, which will have 5 rows and 6 columns. And here you are. We will create matrix M4 with the following dimensions with zeros. If we click at M4, you will see that we've got this matrix. However, if you would like to create matrix of ones, the same syntax says M5 is equal ones, and then we can specify the size of this matrix 5,6, and we've got matrix M5 with ones. Next, how do you think how we can create matrix of sevens or matrix of eights or any other matrix? We can use matrix 1. Therefore, let's create matrix M6 and let, for example, 7 be multiplied with each element of ones matrix, which includes like 5 rows and 6 columns. And here you are, we've got a matrix of sevens. And then, for example, if you would like to change first row to some specific value, we also can use the same syntaxes, like M7 is equal M6, and to this matrix M6 we can add some specific row at the end. In this case we can specify M6 plus, for example, 12 multiply with ones, and here we can specify 2 rows and 6 columns. and then close our matrix. In this case, we will combine matrix M6 with the new matrix which will be created by this function. And if we click enter, you can see that we combine two matrices together. One that we've got in our workspace, and the second one generated by one's function. Next, quite important things, it is rand. Let's create M8 and then create randomly generated matrix with fifth rows and 6 columns. Rand function generates randomly distributed values from 0 to 1. If you would like to get randomly generated values from some values to another values, we can easily multiply each element with, for example, 5. 5 multiply with the matrix rand give us randomly distributed values from 1 to this value. And the final function for automatic matrix generation, it will be A. Thus M10 will be matrix A, which also will be 5, 6. A matrix, it is matrix of zeros, but with the diagonal of ones. And this is also very useful if you would like to change diagonal of some particular matrix. For example, in this case, if you would like to extract diagonal values from M9, we can just multiply M9 and M10 to get diagonal values. Thus, I will use like M11 is equal M9 multiply with M10. However, in this case, I need to put point because I do not want to get matrix multiplication. I would like to multiply by elements of two of these matrices. And if we run it, we will get diagonal elements of matrix that we have. Why? Because we've got zeros. The same if we would like to get diagonal elements, but in one row matrix, we can use function diag. Thus, diagonal will extract diagonal elements of particular matrix, and diag of M9, diag of M9 matrix will be just diagonal of M9. Also, if we work with these functions, also function trace may be useful. Trace, it is a sum of diagonal elements of some matrix. Okay, in this case we can apply it only for square matrices with equal sizes, number of rows and columns. Also, you can see that MATLAB show me error using trace, line 12. Matrix might be square. In this case, matrix M9 includes 5 rows and 6 columns. Let's delete one column from matrix M9 to get in squared matrix to be possible to use trace function. Deleting something from matrix also quite easy. If you would like delete M9 from M9 last column, let's make it a little bit complicated. Fifth column. We need to do the following operation. We need to specify which column we need to delete. Thus, in address we need to specify all rows from 5th column we need to delete. Delete, it is spaced matrix or empty matrix. Thus we need to specify address which we would like to delete and make it equal to space. And if you run, you will see that 5th column has been deleted from matrix. And then we can apply previous command for trace. And in this case I will use upper keyboard and then go to previous value, and here you are. And trace, it means sum of diagonal elements in my matrix. Next, let's try to use some statistical functions, because if you use matrices, it means that we've got some data and we need to aggregate, we need to analyze this data. Thus, in many times we will need to get some statistical operations. Let's introduce new variable s, and I will accompany s with 1 or some number, and statistical matrix S1 will include mean value of matrix M9. In MATLAB we have function mean, then we specify argument of function mean, it will be matrix M9, and if you run it, you will see that function mean will find mean value for each column of matrix M9. If you would like to get total mean value, we will need to use mean function double time. Thus mean, and in this case we've got mean value inside of the whole matrix. Next, let's check standard deviation, std function, also from M9. In this case we've got standard deviation for x column. The same thing for maximum value, thus S4 will be equal to maximum value of M9. We've got the same maximum value for each column of matrix M9. Then S5 will be equal to minimum value of matrix M9, and also we've got it. In some cases we will need to use absolute values without minus sign. In this case S6, for example, will be equal to absolute value of matrix M9. Matrix function ups means getting only positive values from M9. Okay, that's all about statistical operations under the matrix elements. Also, just a second, I think we can apply function find here too. Thus, if we would like to get in values more than some particular, we can apply find, for example, M9 more than 1, and we've got number of elements, just a second, it was S7, number of element which is more than 9, which is more than 1, sorry. Okay, then also quite important, let's talk about automatic entering matrices, and in this case arithmetic progression is very useful. For example, if you would like to create matrix with values from 1 to 10, for example, you do not need to create it by manually. In this case you can apply some automatic generated algorithms, And for example, let's create matrix n, which will be equal to matrix with values from 1 to 10. And if you run it, you will see that this syntax means automatically generated matrix with elements from 1 to 10 with the step 1. If you would like to specify another step, like 2 or maybe 5, it is possible, and in this case we need just to specify amount of step, and we've got final our matrix. If we would like to count how many elements we've got in matrix, in this case there are 3 basic functions. Length, thus we can apply just like n3 is equal length function of matrix n2, and here we've got that in matrix n2 we have length 20 elements. Also the same result will be if we apply function null. Null, it means number of elements. In this case length will show number of columns and null will show total number of elements. However, also we can use function size. Size is much more useful, and for example let's use function size for matrix S7. Thus let's get size of matrix S7. In this case we can see that matrix S7 has 20 rows and 1 column. If we need to specify only number of rows, here we can specify 1. 1, it means rows. Thus we've got number of rows, and if we need number of columns we need to put 2 here, and here you are, we've got one column. Length, null and size is highly useful in different loops, because usually if we would like to process some data, we need to know how many data we have, and in this case one of these 3 functions will be definitely used inside of loop to get a number of elements in some array. And I think it's time to try some matrix operations, or operations between matrix. Thus, for example, if we have, let's create new matrix, for example matrix Z, which will include rand 3. It means that it will be randomly generated matrix with 3 rows and 3 columns. And also we will create matrix X, which is also randomly generated matrix, 3 by 3. If we would like to use summarization of these 2 matrices, we need to just simple to use sum of them. Thus, for example, matrix B is equal Z plus matrix X, and you will see in this case that each element of matrix Z will be summarized with element of matrix X. The same for minusing, thus B1 maybe Z minus X, and we've got some values, and if we apply absolute values, abs for B1, you will see that all minuses will be converted to plus. Next, multiplication. Multiplication is different in matrix. There are specific formula for multiplication. And if we just would like to use multiplication by elements, thus z multiply with the x, in this case it will be matrix multiplication. However, if we put here a point, it means that it will be multiplication by each element. If I try to use b3 equal z multiply with the x, you will see that results will be different, because the last one, it is matrix multiplication, which has specific formula, which means multiplication of one row with column and sum of them. The same we have for division, thus b4 z divided by x, it will be 1 division by specific formulas for matrix, or if we add point, it means division by elements. And final matrix operators, it is power. Thus, if you would like to get in power of each elements separately, you need to put point before multiplication, division, or power. Okay, next let's try to consider how we can save our workspace and all our variables for further usage. In this case, there are three possible ways. First of all, we just can click right button at workspace and click save. And then MATLAB will open dialog box of window and will ask you to enter some title for workspace of that file. In this case, I can put like lesson 1, for example, and you will see that it will be saved somewhere in your personal computer. Also, the same result you will get if you click at the ribbon menu in MATLAB Save Workspace. The same dialog box will be opened and you will see that we already had lesson 1. Therefore, you can type lesson 1b, for example, and you will get possibility to save it. Also, quite important that MATLAB use mat extension to specify files of workspace, data files of workspace. And the third possible way, it is using code. And in this case, function save is used for saving workspace. If I just type save with empty argument, my data, my workspace will be saved automatically at the current work directory with the default title MATLAB. If you would like to specify title of file which we will save, we can specify it here as a string value, lesson 1 MATLAB. If I click enter, such kind of file will be generated in my working space and I can use it. Also, you can see that in my current folder you will see that MATLAB M file is also created. Next, let me introduce you a few very important functions. First of all, if you would like to clear everything from our command window, we should to use CLC function. In this case, we clear command window. To clear workspace, there are two basic functions. Clear all, just a second, clear all. Okay, and in this case, this function clear our workspace. It may be important when we run script multiple times, and to avoid data missing, we should apply clear all or clear vars to prepare our workspace for next computation cycle. Thus, clear all and clear vars should be used in any script at the beginning. Next, if you would like to load data, we just can click on this mat file here and it will be loaded. Or we can use the following code to extract data from a mat file. If I apply clear vars, you will see the same result, and if I use load, for example, lesson 1 MATLAB, lesson 1 MATLAB mat, we've got data that we need. Okay, and that's all for today. I think we cover all basic input for variables in MATLAB and basic functions in MATLAB. Next time we will talk about scripts. Thus, follow me. Thank you.